Will Anderson right now, if we want to look at the odds for the highest defensive player to be taken, Will Anderson is the overwhelming favorite, minus 350. So you have to, just for those who aren't used to betting, if you think Will Anderson's the first defensive player taken, you have to bet $350 to win 100. So it's a big risk if you want to bet that. Jalen Carter, who we just talked about, is 6-1 to be the first defensive player taken. Tyree Wilson, 6-1 as well. I think everybody after that is probably a little bit of a less of a gamble, or sorry, a little bit less of a good gamble there. Will Anderson is a guy who, when he, 6'2", 253, so not a tall guy, ran a 4.6 in the 40, and to me, 32.2% win rate. He was, 6% stop rate in the run game. Like, to me, he reminds me a little bit of like that Kyle Van Noy, Josh Uche, like Belichick kind of Sam Edge guy, that because I saw him play a lot of coverage when I looked at his film. I saw him obviously rush from depth at times. He's a smaller guy, but he's super effective. And so I think he's really got to go to a kind of a creative defense to get the best out of him. I think if you just line him up at outside linebacker every snap and just say, hey, play like a normal outside linebacker, he might not have the utility necessarily that other guys would.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about a guy with legitimate versatility. The Bill Belichick's of the world, of course, will love that. The idea of trying to decide whether in your system or a team system he's an outside backer, an OB, or whether he can rush. I mean, he definitely has natural rush skills. Yeah, I understand that he's 4'6" or whatever he was, 4'6'2" or whatever his number was. When you watch him in the combine drills, I do, by the way, like watching combine drills. I know people think, it is my happy spot because it brings me back to so many years. And a little aside, when I used to work for the Detroit Lions and Ron Hughes was our personnel director, Kevin Colbert was our pro director, Rick Spielman was my senior that brought me in because I was the Blesto scout living down in the Southeast.
Chris Spielman was your middle linebacker.
Chris Spielman was the middle. Matt Russell, a dear friend of mine who used to be the assistant GM for the Broncos. We had a really cool group there. We used to sit there and watch workout after workout after workout, like every combine workout, and we would grade them, right? So it's kind of ingrained in my mind. So when I get around here and I'm doing some prep work, I cannot finish my work without watching these guys' movement. And everyone remember, I know it's not, they're in shorts. I understand all that. It is truly about the movement, about the limitations of movement, right? So I joke about this. If you have a guy who's got one of his right foot is splayed out to 5 or 8 degrees, you might not see it on the game vids, but you are seeing it when you watch the guy truly work out, and you're realizing that splayed foot might prevent him from slamming his foot into the ground, flipping at his hips a certain way if he's turning or redirecting. There are things like that are important because when they are in that spot on the field, there are limitations for them to make plays. I know it sounds really small. These are the nuances. I can't wait to sit down when you join us here in Atlanta and you move here and Sean Clement moves here and we get some guests here like Paul Saban, all of our group, and we sit here and we just bang out video and start watching these guys. You guys teach me analytics, and I can maybe teach you, hopefully, something from the nuance side of this. This is an important thing. So without getting off too much on a tangent here, the movement of this guy, I think, even though he's not a blazer, I think the ability to drop, the ability to turn the corner, the ability, because he is an athletic guy. I don't know if you heard that comment where they were quoting Nick Saban, who I think he was a 3-star recruit, right? I don't think he came out big time.
He wasn't a high guy.
And the first time that Nick saw him, he saw him lined up, put his hand down on the dirt to run. He saw him run. He said, "This guy's a first rounder." That's a pretty good story.
Yeah. Well, and I want to talk a little bit about your point about movement because in my, both of us played college, like both of us were limited, right? You describe yourself as a slow defensive back. I describe myself as a bad tight end, but when you are not limited athletically, but when your movement has limitations, there's only so much you can build on your game, right? Because if a coach is going to come over here and be like, hey, I need you to flip your hips a certain way, if you already have inefficiencies in your movement, it's going to be that much harder for you to adjust to a scheme or adjust to a different coaching style. If you have, like, I think about like when I was a wide receiver before I was a tight end, it was like when they like tried a different move off the line of scrimmage, I had false steps in my feet that were just really bad. And so like I couldn't even execute the off the line of scrimmage stuff because my feet were so bad, right? And like, so again, when a guy can't move a certain way, or when his movement is limited, or it's not perfect, or it's not smooth, you're not, like, development is harder, right? It's just harder to develop when you come from it's just like building a house on a bad foundation, right? Like, if your house is on a bad foundation and you try to build a deck, it's just gonna be that much harder to build a deck. So like, and to me, I think that's, a really, that's why it's important to look at how they move.
Matchup league. It's about staying in phase. Remember, in phase, everyone. In phases, for a secondary to be in phases, to be on someone's hip, your receiver and your DB staying together in phase. In my mind, I mean, whatever it is, making sure that you're able to match the person, in front of you. That could be an offensive lineman sliding with a D lineman. It could be, the coverage. It is just so important to make sure that can't be underestimated, because if you can't move, if you have restrictions, to your point, I don't care how fast you are. It's one of the reasons that we don't categorically say just because someone is a 4.3 and they jump really high that they are a very good athlete. They might have the athletic numbers. On defense, just so everyone knows, I'll throw this out. We always refer to it as reactionary athleticism, right? The ability to stop, again, stop, start, the agility, the explosiveness, stick your foot in the ground, react. That was a big thing. That's a very different set of athletic tools than it is just flying or jumping. Do you remember a guy named Buck? You probably don't remember. Tebucky Jones.
Tebucky Jones, yeah, safety.
Yeah. He was a Syracuse guy, right? He was.
He was a corner first, and he had to move him to safety because he wasn't athletic enough to play corner. Yeah.
But linear guy, looked great. He had, no offense to him, but he had limitations, laterally, of course. And that was always the bane of his existence, how he was going to deal with that. And it was ours as a team. So it's just really, really important to know that just because guys have numbers does not mean they're going to just thrive in the NFL. Because if they can't move and they can't match it, man, they're left in the dust.
Yeah, and Belichick is so great at taking the guy, like Devin McCourty is one of the best players in New England Patriots history, and he was a corner first. He couldn't play the man scheme anymore, so they moved him to safety. He's going to make the Hall of Fame. Like, Tebucky Jones was part of Super Bowls for you guys, and like, even though he wasn't a complete player and probably didn't live up to his draft position, he was still useful. But to your point, like, he had to move to safety because there are only you have to be a certain movement guy to place corner in what Belichick tries to do for the most part. Here's a question here, and this is from BeatGamer99. We really appreciate all the people joining us live. I'm interested in Thomas's thoughts on Will Anderson, considering the talking point that he might not even be the best defensive player in the draft. Now, we've gone in order with Carter to Anderson here. I'm not trying to imply anything about how I think in terms of those two. If you had to compare these two and you had to list them on a big board, does it go Anderson first, or does it go Carter first?
Character stuff aside, which is not usually me because I have to take in the whole picture, I think Carter gets the nod. I like Anderson a lot. They're just again, the fact that he's not blazing it at a 4.49 or a 4.50, that's a little bit of a concern to me. But believe me, he can thrive. I don't think it's drastic. I think he definitely warrants a top 5 pick. But as far as a top 1 or 2, that's pretty complicated when you're talking about someone who's just not smoking it as I might expect. I mean, what did Von Miller
watch me tee this up for you, Thomas? So this is the odds to be the 5th overall pick. So Will Anderson and Tyree Wilson are currently favored to be the 5th overall pick at about 2-1 each. Jalen Carter's at 7-2, and then after that, it's the 2 quarterbacks, Levis and Richardson, followed by Christian Gonzalez, the corner. We're going to talk about corners, but like to your point, Anderson's probably not going in the top 5.